You're live.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and first we'll do the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in Mi'kmaq as a steward of the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are all treaty people. Before we move on with the agenda, I would like to ask that we move topic 2, municipal fees, reserve funds, budget.
Sorry, it's not reserve funds either. It's just the municipal.
Just the municipal fees, discussion to number 1 and start. If that's all right with council, I'll look for a motion to amend the agenda.
So move.
Second. Moved by Councillor Bremner, second by Councillor Church. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried. I guess we'll move along, so you can start your presentation. Topic 2.
Thank you, Chair. All right. So what we have for you today is the precursor to an amendment to the fees policy, P20. This is a policy that, as the name states, covers the fees that we charge and publishes what they are. This particular policy has not been updated since late 2019, so it's been about 5.5 years. To start, I'd like to mention that there will be further adjustments to some of our fees that need a little bit more work and consideration, specifically around some of the public works and landfill stuff. But we wanted to get something going a little quicker to catch up with some of the stuff that, for example, there have been some fees changed in community development department that we want to make sure the fee policy reflects. So what we have here as an attachment is simply a form that shows what is currently in Schedule A of Policy P20. And there are a number of tables that cover each of the types of fees. And what you'll see is each of these tables is set up the same way. There are 6 columns. The first 3 are what is currently in that schedule of the policy, with the name of the fee itself, and then notes that go along with that. And then the next 2 columns would be the proposed fee going forward and proposed note that would be included in that. And then a column for a discussion of the change, so you know why we're doing it. We have all the department heads here to kind of give a little bit of feedback into each of their departments, but I'm going to go through and just lead a discussion on what these proposed changes are. So if there are any questions at any time, let me know. So the start is the administration fees. Now the first page here covers MPS and LUB document charges, fax fees, parking tickets, photocopy fees. We're not proposing any changes to any of these, just as they currently exist will be how we're going to bring forward for amendment. The second page continues that first table of the administration fees with vendor licensing costs. These ones are, we're not proposing changes to any of the fees. However, we are just going to update the comments that reference the underlying bylaw number 11 for trade and licensing. So that's the only change there. Same with the auctioneer's charge, which is part of that same bylaw. No changes to the tax certificate fee, NSF check fee. Deed transfer tax, we're just going to include the 1.5% here. That wasn't previously included. Not a change, it's just noting it. Also, no change to interest on overdue taxes. The third-party credit services fee, what we're proposing here is, since this isn't technically a municipal fee, this is a fee set by and collected by a third party. I felt it was not really clear that that was the case by including what the fee is. So what I'm proposing to change is to just change this to say as set by and collected by a third party, to make it clear that this isn't us that is collecting this and we're not setting it. That would also prevent any sort of discrepancies if that third party provider were to change their fee at some point in the future and we didn't update our policy. We could end up with some confusion there, so we're going to get away from including that. The next table is for animal control. There are no proposed changes for these 4 fees: dog licensing, redemption fee for dogs, kennel application fee, kennel license, are all going to stay the same as they are currently. On to the next page, the table here would be for building inspection fees. We have no changes recommended for the building inspection through the various different construction values. No change to the zoning confirmation letter or the civic number plate costs or the public hearing documents per page cost. Where we do have some changes to put in for the LUB amendment application fee It was currently listed at $300, listed as refundable within 7 days if withdrawn, plus a $500 deposit. In practice, that's not really a deposit. There's no true up or collection or refund. It's just a fee that goes towards those costs. So what we're proposing now is to slightly increase the overall fee to $900 to keep up with the growing cost of delivering that service, and removing the clarity that that is refundable, with the intention to, because when they go through these applications, people have meetings with the staff and make sure that they're sure they want to go forward. Once they've filed that, it's not refundable at that point.
I just want to add, so for a while there, when we first did this, we were doing some tracking of that, and we were finding that we were never giving a refund. It was always, the advertising costs always exceeded the amount they had done for a deposit, and we weren't going and saying, we weren't charging them the extra. So that's a reflection of this, is that we know that those costs are higher than what we were collecting.
Yeah, and that's going to be the same case through the next few that we'll mention here as well. So similarly, the MPS amendment application fee was $500 plus the $500. We're proposing that be just set at $1,200, so a slight increase overall and consolidated. Similarly, the development agreement application fee or substantial amendment to a DA, proposing a $1,000 fee for that instead of the $900 broken out between the fee and the deposit. The next one, the discharge of development agreement, was currently just listed as registry fee in accordance with land registry office fees. And we're proposing setting that fee explicitly at $350 to cover the increase, to cover legal costs associated with the discharge that's done there. Unsubstantial amendment to development agreement. Again, we're kind of consolidating the fee and what was called a deposit and just calling it a $600 fee going forward. Development permits currently are broken out between construction values up to 5,000 and construction values over. We're proposing removing that distinction and just charging the flat $10 fee regardless of the value of the construction. Site plan approval, the fee is staying the same, however, just similarly to the ones above, removing that refundability within 7 days with the understanding that people will go through that process to be sure that they want to apply before they pay the fee. The final subdivision approval fee for 6 lots or fewer, and as well for 7 more. We're not proposing any changes at this point. However, there is further discussion coming on this pending, so discussion around the open space dedication. That'll be something coming to you at a later date, but no changes right now. No changes right now to the tentative subdivision approval or zoning confirmation letter. A fairly substantial looking change to the application for letter of concurrence for communication towers. Not something that happens a whole lot, but the fee in the current policy is $400 plus $500 towards advertising. What we're proposing is a flat fee of $3,100 to cover the costs of and the process of notifying neighboring property owners. Yeah, I would imagine if you're putting up a communication tower, a $3,000 permit is not going to be one of the substantial portions of that cost.
And just as a reminder that council had a conversation around that fee amount when we did the switch. So if you recall that we used to use the CRINS process, and then we switched to do our own internal process. And at that time we had talked about that amount being the fee. So now it's just a matter of actually filling it in our fees policy.
The warbs and berthage fees, $40, no change. And then we have a few here that are currently missing from the policy that we think should be included. So that starts with the demolition permit. We're recommending a $20 fee there. Variance request fee, recommending a $50 fee. And then laminating services. This would be services for residents laminating municipal documents and for nonprofit groups laminating their own documents. And there's a price of $1, $2, or $3 depending on the size of the page. For clarity, there's that one right at the bottom, $1 for cards. That's actually going to be removed. That's just something we do internally sometimes for staff. It's not an externally available service or fee. The next table is brand new. This is for the uniform signage fees. This is to capture those fees that are covered in policy or in bylaw number 152 into our fees policy. So we have that full reflection of our actual fees. These are all new to the fees policy, but not new to the municipality. Then we get into the public works table. So for sewer application fee, no changes there. The sewer hookup deposit varies based on estimates for the job. This is something that there will be some more information coming about proposed changes to that. We are looking at perhaps simplifying this and setting a standard fee rather than going through the process of collecting a deposit based on an estimate, accruing costs based on the work that's done, and then either billing or refunding the difference. There are potential ways to do that in a much more efficient administrative process. And there will be more info on that, but no changes right now. And then similarly, no changes to the driveway culvert replacement or sidewalk entrance replacement costs. And then we're adding a new one here to reflect the sewer infrastructure charges bylaw that was passed last year. So that's bylaw 155. Adding a line here to reflect the $6,000 for the first EDU of any property and $4,000 for subsequent EDUs. The last table, which is a couple full pages in this document, are covering the Kaiser Meadow landfill fees. We are proposing, so there will be more changes to come as we do a more robust revenue analysis for the landfill. But for now, we wanted to make a few changes up front that we could do fairly quickly. Overall, I'd say, well, I'll just go through the way I have been. So no changes to the interest on overdue accounts. The asphalt and brick and cardboard and paper, we're proposing for the asphalt and brick, we're proposing a 5% increase. Oh, and same for the cardboard and paper. I'm sorry, in the note it says remove. That was an error. That should say 5% increase. The next list, a handful of direct hauls that are all listed as per processing agreement. We are recommending to remove those from the fees policy. These are fees that are agreed upon based on signed agreements we have with other organizations. They're not public fees that we would charge anybody. There's no need to include it in this policy. Mixed C&D, residual waste residential and residual waste commercial, we're proposing 5% increases on each of those. We still think that that's relatively low compared to market, but we didn't want to do large changes right away. This will be part of that bigger analysis that we look at.
We don't charge our own citizens if they bring stuff, unless it's commercial.
Oh, sorry.
Through Chair to the board, yes, there's a limit that the residents can bring up to without charge, and then once they get above that, then the fee kicks in for them. For businesses, it kicks in there, but they pay the same residential.
Yeah, I think it's around 1,500 pounds a day
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, yeah, I just want to be sure that they're still like to bring a half-ton truckload of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and that is noted in the policy as well. So the fee says for above 1,500 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that we don't accept outside waste. That's based on flow control agreements that other regions would have. We're not proposing any changes to the organics and blue bags, the next two residual waste categories, or the sandblasted sand. We're proposing a 5% increase to the tipping fee for contaminated soil. No change for non-contaminated soil, so if somebody wants to bring us good soil, we'll take it. I don't think we get a lot of that delivered to the scale house, to be honest. Scrap metal, proposing again a 5% increase on those tip fees. Similarly on septic waste and clean wood from residential uses, so 5% increase to the tipping fees there. We have, so the next handful here are a combination of two types. One is the as per processing agreement we discussed earlier, that we would suggest we're gonna remove those because they don't need to be listed here.
Excuse me, sorry, Tim, Councillor Connors has a question.
Oh, yeah.
If I get there.
Thank you. So in terms of the scrap metal, what do we do with the scrap metal?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Connors, we do shred up, and there are a couple of companies that will take that process way, which will recoup
Right.
some of the costs from that.
So we sell it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because I can't imagine anyone bringing scrap metal when there's places that will take scrap metal and,
Sometimes there is, because there's certain metals
Okay,
that.
fair enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just it, and sometimes it's just the
Right.
convenience of,
assume certain.
I got a
yeah,
bunch of stuff in the back.
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and some of that metal that's not as high value, we'll end up storing it on site for a while until it's an amount that's worth selling. So there is some internal cost associated with managing that, even though we do collect revenue when we dispose of it. Yeah, and then, so I mentioned as per processing agreement, we're suggesting to remove those because that doesn't need to be in this policy. There's a handful of items here: tires, landfill, Michelin Bridgewater, Michelin Pictou, and Valley Waste. That's not, obviously those are, the Valley Waste one in particular is an artifact from previous existing agreement. We're looking at removing those. The other ones that are listed at 8906, we're suggesting no change for now, although there will be some more assessment as to the usefulness of those categories. Dead animals, we're not suggesting any change to the cost for that. I assume dumping of dead animals might be something we want to avoid. Similarly, no change across the last few. So hazardous household waste, paint and propane tanks, those both have no charges. Septic gravel and ICI and septic gravel residential, also suggesting no changes at the moment. So those are the changes that we're going to be bringing forward as a more formal amendment to the policy with the first notice to amend and all that stuff. But we wanted to bring that to this table first to give a chance to consider and discuss. If there was any questions or comments, this is the time.
No questions? Thank you.
Are we competitive with other landfills? I know that it's like for our own residents, but somebody in Lunenburg Municipality could bring it here. Are we actually cheaper here than what they could take to their own site?
Through your chair to Councilor Church, yeah, I ran some numbers based on some of the other comparables. We're at least 20% under our nearest comparable.
But do I understand that we wouldn't take household waste from Lunenburg County outside of Chester Municipality?
Yeah, generally, we're still within yes, yeah, we're generally still within sort of the regulated. We aren't generally taking materials from other areas that we don't already have contracts or other agreements with.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I guess we're going to move on now to municipal committees.
Yep.
Challenges and opportunities presentation. Corporate strategic management. Who's going to do that?
Aaron and I are gonna tag team on this one, I think.
Okay,
So
take it away.
We wanted to bring, we wanted to bring the fees policy stuff forward in case there was discussions around raising some of those development permit fees and deeper discussion around some of that stuff. So that's why we brought it to a policy and strategy session, in case you're wondering. That was the intent there. So for the municipal committees, challenges and opportunities. So we wanted to have a conversation around our policies around committees of council, around some of the challenges that we've seen, and just try and get some direction before we bring any kind of changes forward to council. The purpose was to identify and discuss the challenges and opportunities, and then to provide, to get some direction, for staff to get some direction regarding further analysis to be conducted and recommendations. Like what further information do you need from staff in order to get to a decision point on some of this? So the first thing we're going to do is a review of the current committees of council. So just as a high-level reminder, overview, the purpose of the committees of council is to focus on high-level policy and strategy, to advance council priorities, to provide advice, recommendations to staff and council, to foster collaborative solutions to complex problems, to engage subject matter experts and gather community perspectives. The types of committees, generally, there's standing committees, there's special committees, statutory committees. We have citizen advisory committees. We have community. So some of this doesn't apply in our situation. We don't really have community councils. That's more of an HRM type situation. We have our planning advisory council, or planning advisory committee, area advisory committees. We have some intermunicipal or regional committees, and then we have those external committees of that council's asked to provide representation on. So we gave you an overview of all of our current committees. These are the internal committees, so these are committees of council. We can go through each of these if you want, but we don't have to. So they're there for your reference as we go through this, and whether or not they're a subcommittee or not, or if they have subcommittees. The Chester Municipal Planning Advisory Committee, I will highlight that there's a Water Quality Monitoring Committee, and it says Mill Cove, but I think it was, oh yes, it is Mill Cove, sorry, it is Mill Cove. And I'm not sure if that's still a committee.
They're not doing anymore.
The Fox Point one, so I think that one might be removed. I think that one's actually been removed. So I won't go through all of the committees. They're there for your reference if you want to see them. The relevant committee data, so some of them they meet on different schedules. Some of them meet 2 times a year, like our audit committee, and that is by, it exists because of legislation, and so we have to meet those 2 times a year at least. And it includes all members of council. Some of them, like our dangerous and unsightly premise committee some of them meet as needed, and then some of them meet on a more regular basis, monthly or bi-weekly. They, as you can see, all have different numbers of councillors involved. Some of them don't have councillor members on them. Some of them have 1 or 2 councillors on them. And then there's at least that one committee that's a committee of all of council for the audit committee. So I'm trying not to belabor it and not keep you here all night. So if I'm running through this too fast or you want to stop, let me know. Some of the current challenges we're having. One is ongoing vacancies, right? So that's probably one of our biggest challenges with committees right now is the ongoing vacancies. And how do we engage people in the committees? So there's potentially different reasons for that. Some of our committees are structured so that you have the terms of reference or the policy that established the committee says that there's maybe 7 members of the public and there's 1 per district. They're very it's district specific. And so when we advertise, you might do the ad for a member for District 1 and a member for District 2, say, if there's 2 vacancies. You get 4 people respond, and none of them are from District 2. So you get your member from District 1, and then you have 3 extra people, but you have to go and re-advertise because you didn't get the person from District 2. So that has been a challenge for us on an ongoing basis. So we just wanted to put that on the table, have discussion around, do we want to continue with that district model? Do we want to move to something where there's maybe less specific terms of reference, where you just say there's 7 committees we will endeavor to have representation from, instead of saying it consists of a member from District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4. So there's ways around that. There's also looking at potentially moving away from district-based representation and going towards skills-based or expertise-based representation. I see we have a question, so.
Yeah,
Councillor Church.
thank you. I just have a comment. I would still like to see district representation. However, it can be a problem because I know we've advertised numerous times for certain committees. I also think if we can't get somebody, that we should be able to fill it with whoever applies. And that might be 3 from 1 district.
So broadening that where we
Yes.
will endeavor to have representation from.
Yes, I feel that that's important, particularly for municipal planning. I mean, the Recreation Committee operates that way, but they've had difficulty recruiting people from a certain district, and, you know, even though they have somebody that would volunteer, it's not from that district. So I think that would solve a bit of a problem.
Councillor Connors.
Thank you. I was actually going to say the exact same thing as Councillor Church in its entirety, because I took a look through the committees that we do look at district representation, and I think that those committees are important to maintain if we can, strive, of course, all that we can do to have that district representation. But again, similar to Sharon's comments, exactly, have the leeway to open that or expand that envelope. And, you know, we endeavor, but we can't, yeah, so, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, another one.
Oh, sorry, Al.
Sorry, I'm pretty much gonna say the same thing. You know, I think it's, you try, you want people from your districts on there, but I can say in particular, the rec committee. I've appointed Kevin Marzak for I don't know how many times, over how many years, because nobody from the Chester Basin actually applied for it. Now, does he work at the Basin Rec Park and look after it most of the time anyway? Yeah, but there was no other application, so I mean, I don't know if we broke the rules in that case or not, but
Yeah.
he's been appointed, even though he doesn't live in Chester Basin or District 4, to represent us. So yeah, you try to, but if there's
Yeah.
a point in comes, you just put somebody else on.
All right, we'll take that away. Then, so one of the other things is, do we look at, maybe do we have too many committees? That was another part of the discussion of, or do we have too many? Do we have enough? Maybe we want to expand it, maybe. So we just thought, this is a good opportunity to have the discussion around, you know, are the committees all still relevant? Are they all still necessary?
Counselor Bremner, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Deputy Warden, through you to the council. As chair of the nominating committee, I'm going to make a couple of comments that I've learned 6 months into this wonderful project now. This is challenging. I'm going to be honest. We as councillors have a lot of things to take care of, a lot of positions to fill. Not everybody wants to be on committees. Some want to be on specific committees. That may work, that may not work. But I think anywhere where we can entice community people to be on committees, I would love to see that somehow. The younger, the better. Because when I look at these names have been around here for a long time on many of these committees. I'd also like to suggest, and I'm looking at one specific, it's the Heritage Advisory Committee, and I know Carol's in the audience with us this evening. She's been doing that forever and ever and ever, and it's been amazing work she's done. But this work is starting to become times very overloaded and then other times not enough to keep them busy like they want to be. And I think we noted split that apart from the advisory committee, either the municipal or the Chester
Yeah,
Village.
so that committee used to be well, it was a standalone committee, and then we moved it to part of as one of the duties of the planning advisory committees. So the Municipal Planning Advisory Committee and the Village Planning Advisory Committee. And then we had an understanding that the MGA didn't allow, the heritage role wasn't a role for planning advisory committees. So we separated them. We've since reviewed one of the acts, the Heritage Property Act, I think it was, and the Heritage Property Act says that you can assign that role, that heritage role. And it's a specific role. It's around the review of the applications for heritage properties to a planning advisory committee. So it is something where you could look at potentially rolling those back into those as a function of your two planning advisory committees if you wanted to.
So, if I may, a supplement, I have not discussed this with Carol by any means, so this is just coming off the cuff of me. I look at the Heritage Committee, it looks like there's 3 vacancies that are going to have to be
Yeah,
filled.
and actually, both Carol and Cindy, I won't speak for them if they're going to reoffer, their
Right.
terms are up. So we're getting ready to put ads out. We would put it out for 5 vacancies.
Looks like a whole new group of people potentially with maybe Carol and Cindy, but I think we should, if we can, combine to give a value of meetings that need to take place on a consistent basis, as where some of these don't have meetings for months and months and months, and, you know, maybe that's a way to join them together is where I'm going with this. I also think if there's committees here that we don't need anymore, and I think Councillor Vino and a few of us had this discussion months ago when we were talking about this, to look at what might be of benefit and what might not be of benefit anymore to us, and I think we removed 3 or 4 the last time we went through this, of different committees that were on the list.
I think, I don't recall if we've removed ones. I know Sherbrooke Lake Park Advisory Committee is kind of an on-hold committee where it's not really something that's been active. I don't know if that will become active again at some point.
Looking at the community use of schools, is that something, Alan, we've done anything with for years?
I haven't met with them for a long time, it's, but if something of significance came up, I suppose we would, but.
But it comes
do
to
I consider
council.
Particularly,
Andre.
no, I don't really think we actually need to have it. Oh, unless it's part of the agreement that we signed.
I would have to look into that one. So if that's one you want us to look at, we can, when we bring this all back, that's why we want to have this, right?
Yeah, I
When we
think-
bring it back, we can look at, is that a committee we're required to have? Is that something that we
We
could?
signed some sort of an
Yep.
agreement. I don't
So that's
know what
one
was in there.
we can look at.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I think that's where I'm going with this. If we can streamline anything or,
Mirror them together.
yeah, marry them together in some cases, I think that's an opportunity, because let's be honest, we've been through this 3 or 4 times now where we bring names forward and people, whatever the reasons are, they either don't want to be on those committees or whatever, and then we struggle to find people to go on, and
Hard to find people.
it gets difficult. So I would ask for the streaming and be very out of the box thinking on what we might be able to do to
Yeah.
keep it
Thank
more modern. Thank you.
Councillor Vino.
I have a question, I don't know the answer to it. The Citizens Landfill Monitoring Committee, is that a requirement under the permit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so that one has not met in a while, it hasn't been active, it is a requirement to have it, so we know that we need to get that committee back up and active again. Yeah, we need some people, we might need to look at the terms of reference for it.
Would it be worth engaging staff to see if we can have our permit revised? Because I think of it as, we have a number of environmental permits to operate treatment plants, as well as, our landfill. Maybeck has a permit to operate their treatment system, and they used to have a requirement to have a citizens committee.
Yeah.
And that has been dropped.
Okay,
And, it just, to me, like when you first start up a facility, there's a real need to have that communication with your community, but as it matures and becomes routine, it's, the urgency isn't so much there, it becomes.
Sure.
We have all the systems in place to monitor it from an environmental standpoint.
okay, good feedback. We'll look into that and see if it's something that can be revised and, before we bring back. So we will definitely look at that committee as well.
Just
Councillor Church.
Thanks, just a comment. And certainly the reports that do come forward on the fish studies, et cetera, can come directly to council or
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
the landfill manager. But we've had difficulty, we have only 2 members now. I think
Yeah.
one passed away and another one, just difficult to get members that are interested.
Yeah.
I think if there's a major issue, you get interest, but unless you have a major issue, you don't get interest.
See if we can get rid of it.
Yeah, and part of the challenge is that all of these committees take staff resources and staff time, and so if we can streamline, and it makes sense, then I will take a look at those opportunities.
Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you. So the next one is inconsistencies in structure. I don't know how much of a challenge this really is, but it does, some of the committees have 1 counselor, some committees have 2. So I think the last couple times we brought forth terms of reference, it's been how come 2 on this one, how come 1 on that one, how come everybody's on 1 committee. So there is an opportunity to look at, do you want to have some consistency and it's 1 counselor or it's 2 counselors? How many committees per counselor is manageable? When you look at this, you're only seeing the committees of council. I did provide a list of the external committees, so there's a handful of other committees or regional committees that are there as well. So how many counselors per or how many committees per counselor is manageable, especially if you're on some committees have, like you said, they're not active, they meet once a year. Some committees meet monthly or bi-weekly now. We have a committee that for the short term is probably looking at meeting more frequently, so there's some inconsistencies there. And then how do you rotate appointments? So, hold on, we got a tech, there we go.
There you go. Councillor Connors.
Thank you. So if I think back over the last couple of years, under committee reports on our council meetings, I don't think many of our committees are meeting. What committee reports do we hear from? Social Public, I can speak for myself. Social Public Library and the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Partnership. I don't hear from many, the Church Memorial Park, right?
Remote's been on for about
Remo, FAC, Fire Advisory Committee. So, I don't know what's happening with, so, I know we're not gonna get into that, but I guess it's my opportunity right now, but, so Social Housing Action Coalition, I don't know if they're still meeting. The Accessibility Committee and the Anti-Racism Committee, I don't even know if they meet, because I haven't heard a report yet, I don't think from that.
Usually those come back as a staff report.
As
If
a
there's-
staff
As a
report.
staff report, those ones are coming back
Okay,
as
those
staff
are
reports.
coming back as a staff report.
Generally speaking, as staff recommendations. The regional anti,
Yeah, the regional
Okay.
one, it was just a brief introduction, so we actually are not meeting until later this month,
Okay, okay,
so.
it's fair, it's just good to know.
yeah. The Accessibility Committee was kind of quiet for a while
Right.
because we had done the initial work around the regional accessibility, the initial work of getting the accessibility plan going and then submitting that. And that was their initial sort of big push for work. And that was 3 or 4 years ago
Right,
now.
right.
And then we've been working on that plan and we just got them together again. They did an update on the plan.
Right.
And you saw that come back to you and
Yeah,
you just
oh, yeah.
recently
When
approved that.
Ellen-
So that's
yeah,
what
Ellen
you
can-
see
yeah,
come back in
yeah,
those. You don't
yeah,
see like a committee report on each meeting. You see the recommendations from that committee come back when
Okay,
they have
so
them.
I'm treating it differently. I think that it's, maybe I just need to stop giving my committee reports, because I think it's important to elevate the profile of these organizations. So maybe the lens that I'm using myself is wrong. Right.
Count, okay.
If I could, sorry. So this, what you bring up is further on in the policy
Okay.
approach. Yeah, so some, and I can speak to it now if
Sure,
council would
yeah.
like some of the options that council could consider for bringing reports back to the council table where other municipal units have done, where sometimes it's the chair of the committee that's responsible for preparing a report that's presented to council. Either the chair presents it to council or staff would, or staff have a form that either staff who are supporting the committee or councilors who are representative of that committee could fill out a consistent sort of form depending on what council wants to hear in terms of content from each committee meeting. Or you could leave it as it is now, which is council reps or staff reports that come forward on an ad hoc basis. But those are some of the options for council's consideration when we talk about a policy approach. And if we're looking at more consistent, like an overarching policy when it comes to committees of council, it is certainly something that is up for discussion.
Thank you, that's great.
Councillor Vino.
Well, I, for one, would like to see more consistency in how we appoint council representation on our committees. It seems very haphazard. Sometimes you have 1, 2, sometimes 2, and the warden may or may not attend. It's extremely, it just seems like when the committees are developed, it just seems like whatever the feeling was on the day. And I don't think it's really been very thoughtfully put together, and I would like to see, if we're gonna invest a bit of time into this, that we try to make it so that we put more resources where in the important areas, and those that aren't, then remove them.
Okay.
Take a look at what that means, yeah.
Yeah, we'll take a look at what that means. And then one of the other challenges is overlapping mandates, difficult to maintain, difficult to focus. So are there committees that no longer align with council's current priorities, committees that could be merged? So kind of all of what we've just been talking about. And then do we put an annual review of committees on a discussion like this, or as every couple of years we review those?
Councillor Vino.
communities that could be merged or changed around? Okay. Prior to, when did we do our widespread zoning here? We always had general basic, it was like,
Yep, so we had general basic, and we still have general basic.
yeah,
The
but that was
plan
pretty
review
much,
was
everything was
done.
general basic, and then we had the village.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now we got,
And since then, we've recognized that that's inadequate, and we have a fairly sophisticated system of providing zoning, which with
Yep.
all kinds of need for planning oversight, both in and outside of the village.
Yep.
We're also confronted with changes in our growth here, so we can recognize that Hubbards, although it's a small hamlet now, is poised to become maybe one of our larger, like urban centers, I guess you'd call it, but you know, it's gonna be more population there than ever was before. And we can see that when we did our boundary reviews, we can see that that district is our fastest growing district. And
Yeah, that district was actually outside of the plus minus 10%, so we know that that's gonna be one we have to look at.
And it's
Yeah.
gonna continue, and we can see the development, and we can see, now that we have some zoning in place, we can see the kind of requests that we're getting, and we're getting more of them there than in other areas. And I question, because the current planning advisory setup that we have is based on the old framework of a village, which was somewhat sophisticated, and the entire rest of the municipality, which was
yeah,
unsophisticated.
hardly any rules.
And now I feel like it's turned, most of the development realistically is gonna occur outside. And on some occasions, it will be inside. And I would suggest that we combine the committees, make one planning advisory committee, because it's not gonna make sense when Hubbard's becomes a village in its own right. Are we gonna have 3 committees then? Are we gonna have a Hubbard's
That
planning?
can't deal with
We're gonna have a Hubbard's planning committee and a Chester one, and then when Chester Basin gets its sewer and it starts to blow up, are we gonna have a Chester Basin planning committee? I think not. I think
Staff can't handle it.
I think we have to have one well-equipped, sophisticated planning advisory committee. I think that, so that the Chester, I think we should still encourage the village commission to furnish us with a representative on our municipal planning advisory committee if we were to combine them, so that we have that village voice. But I think that it's time for us to look serious at this, because this structure that we have is an antique and a relic to a time before zoning.
Okay?
Councilor Bremner?
Thank you, Deputy. Councilor Reno, I agree. First of all, most people don't understand what the village commission represents, what the municipality actually is responsible for or not, and it gets all gray and everybody starts overlapping, and I do like the idea of less may be better, to have where we're getting challenged so much to get representations. And I want to go on to Councilor Connor's discussion. I like to hear reports from committees on their actions, their lack of actions, because that gives us some idea. If it only takes 2 minutes or 5 minutes, it's better to hear the real world instead of sitting here guessing what's going on. And as a new counselor, I want to know what's going on or what's not going on. So I think that's huge. And I do believe we're outdated in this committee structures for many reasons that we've brought up to this table. And I'm actually glad we're doing this right now so we can get ahead of the game and hopefully help our districts and our municipality get better balance on what we're trying to do, and help our citizens, you know, get streamline things so that they're not so complicated and so overwhelmingly challenging when we have to deal with things. Thank you.
So I would add, just to your point, Tom, so when we developed this list of committees that we're doing, so are we gonna look at which committees we'd like a report from, or are you, like, you'd like a report on every committee if the council member's on it? Is that what you?
Well, I'll speak for myself, of course. I think if you've had a meeting and there's something to report, you should be bringing that forward. If you don't have anything, it's easy to say we haven't had anything and just move on, but at least identify what's happening. If we don't identify what's happening, we don't know. We're sitting here saying, is that committee still active? Is that committee not active? Is that committee doing anything? And I think we're we're actually asking our own questions for the lack of what we've missed on opportunity. So again, these are my thoughts on where we may be able to streamline this a little bit. Yeah, it may take another 5 minutes at a meeting, but at least we're informed. Thank you.
Warden Weber?
Yeah, no, I just on the whole planning advisory committee, I think, yeah, things have changed. And I think we should merge it, and yes, we should have a representative directly from the village commission. But unless we merge them, we're going to end up with 5 or 6 committees, and staff cannot handle it, and I know better than that. They can't, it's hard enough to deal with what they're doing now, so I think it should be one.
Councillor Coolin?
So as for District 2, like, obviously it's going to be, as most of us assume, is going to be a hot spot, you know, moving forward. By adding that into the committee, would it be overwhelming to the staff currently now, knowing that it's going to be a bigger project moving forward? As far as identifying them all separate, I agree with Councillor Vino, that, and Warden Weber, that it should be mirrored, but at what point does it overextend the staff? We always have to consider the staff when it comes to, the
So
engagements.
the staff have to do the reports on those changes, and
Regardless.
whether it goes to one committee or 2 committees, it's
Okay.
probably easier to go to one committee
Absolutely.
than to have to do 2 different
Good.
committee structures and keep 2 different committees juggled, so.
Perfect.
Thanks, Councillor Vino.
So
You
I'll
can
just
speak directly into the
one
mic so we
final
can hear.
comment on that, if I can. I
Can
got
you
the
speak
red-
a little
I got-
louder, sir?
I've got the red mic here.
Yeah.
So, one final comment is that the criticism that the change in that committee structure might receive is that you aren't getting representatives from the area of the planning where planning is taking place. For example, if there was some sort of development plan for Valley, and then you'd have a committee that may not be completely made up of people from the village. But the reality of the outside area now is that we are getting requests for development on the Hubbard's interchange, and that committee is made up of people from all over this area, and may have people from New Ross or Western Shore that are not in that area. So that very same concern is one that we're gonna have by the nature of what we are, is a rural municipality. So you can't expect to have just people from one local neighborhood making all planning decisions every time. So I think hopefully we're gonna populate a well-rounded planning advisory committee with thoughtful people that will have empathy for the people that will be in the geographic area where the planning is to take place, and they'll give thoughtful comment. So, but I think that a change in the planning structure is required, but I do expect maybe some concern that they're not gonna be representative of the area, but that's the nature of this sort of committee right now in the Municipal Planning Advisory Committee.
And I think that ultimately, it's a committee. We take recommendations or we don't take recommendations. So it all comes back to the councillor, and I think that's important to think of it that way as well. So we have Councillor Church. Wait till I find you. There you go.
Thank you. I'll just say, if we make these changes, it's very important to roll out the communication well, because we don't want it to be negative. This is a positive move, and I think we need to be very on sending out the right message. But I do know that things have gone to the Village Planning Commission, and then committee, and then gone to the Municipal Planning Committee, and that, it's just like 2 levels, and you've got staff, same staff at both, and it's just, it's getting harder to do the work. So one committee was good, just how we communicate that could be critical.
Thank you, Councillor Bremner. Sorry.
Thank you, Deputy, through you to Council. I'm going to touch on dangerous territory, but I really appreciate what Councillor Vino said. This is a municipality. This is not Chester. This is not just Hubbard's. This is a municipality. And we need people to think as a package. I've been listening for too long that, oh, that's them getting it and us not. Well, we're a municipality. We'll work together. We have to work together. in finding the common ground that's developing for everyone to gain. If Hubbard's gains, Chester gains, Western Shore gains, everybody will gain. So let's look at it as a municipality, and I can't say that strong enough. It's time for that to really come forward, and I like this idea because this should be able to package that to a new thought process that hopefully people can understand. We have big things could happen in the municipality, and we have to protect the things that are historical and that, but we also have to look as a municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. Tara?
Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. Are there other challenges? So we put some just questions there for thought and discussion. Are the committee sizes and composition working well? We had a little bit of discussion around that. Should councillor involvement be more consistent? We did have a bit of discussion around that. Would standardized terms of reference improve clarity and function? And that is a preview of the next section, so probably best to leave that to the next section. Preferred method for reporting to council, had a little discussion around that, got some feedback. And then are there committees that should be reevaluated or consolidated? We just had a conversation around that. So I think we're on track, got some direction, and so Aaron and I are gonna tag team this next part. So right now, I don't know if you're aware of this on part 2, we have four different policies, not types of policies. We have 4 policies that govern committees. One is P08, which is the Committees of Council and Their Duties policy. We didn't include it for you, but we have a policy around the Committees of Council and their duties. And then we have Policy 109, which is Council and Committee Procedural Policy. And they're combined together, and I will say that as I was reviewing that, and we just reviewed that a couple times recently, some of it doesn't make a lot of sense to be, the committee pieces don't necessarily make sense to be in there anymore. I think probably it might make more sense to put the pieces in P109 that refer to the committees specifically into the P08 and combine those. And then we have individual policies or terms of reference. Some are policies, some are just terms of reference, and they're not treated the same necessarily. They don't need to necessarily be amended the same way for the different specific committees. And then we have Policy 58, which is the remuneration of committee members policy. So I think there's an opportunity to look at those policies, have one sort of overarching, potentially, this is for discussion, have one overarching committee policy, and then you might pull some of the sections that are relevant of the terms of reference or the policies that are that you want some consistency in, put them into one overarching policy, get the consistency in that one overarching policy, and then identify the areas that you want to be more specific to each committee and have a terms of reference or a policy related to that committee. So that things like maybe committee composition isn't going to be consistent across every committee, so that would be in your terms of reference. But how the meeting is run and the Robert's rules and all of this stuff and the voting and the quorum, that could all be in the overarching policy. So just some food for thought there, I think, of where we were coming from. It's even caused some confusion for staff of, well, is this a terms of reference or is this a policy? How do I do this? Do I need to include these pieces of it? So it's been a little confusing. And I think because we do have 4 different policies right now, we've got probably some inconsistencies and conflicting policies on what's in the terms of reference versus what's in our committee policy or what's in our P08 or what's in our P109. So there's just some inconsistencies and overlap there. So,
Councillor Bremner.
I would strongly suggest that gets cleaned up. That's way out of whack. I tried to review that myself, and it got me so confused. I said, what am I actually trying to do here as a committee chair? What is the right thing and what is the wrong thing? And it just flipped me back and forth so many times that, please clean it up. Thank you.
Councillor Connor.
Thank you. So I'm in full agreement in terms of cleaning this up, consistency. One thing I would add, and this, I'd forgotten about it until now, other municipal units have expanded the conflict of interest piece that they themselves have had to sign off on and take training. They've expanded it to their committees, and I would like to see that as well, that each of the committee members look at that conflict of interest.
Okay.
We incorporate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Warden Weber.
Yeah, I'm just the same. I agree with what they've said. Just simplify as best you can.
Okay.
Tara.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where I am now. So
Number
just,
4.
yeah, so the policy, or PO8, the committees of council and their duties, it reiterates council's abilities under the MGA, establish, that they can establish and appoint committees and members. It describes the procedure. So I don't think I need to go through all of this. We've already said simplify these. I won't go through those individual ones. Just trying to think of where we go. So we already talked about some of the challenges of that. It's led to some confusion. We'll look at sort of an overarching policy then. We'll look at combining the pieces of those policies and taking out what we need to. We'll look at the conflict of interest and expanding that out to conflict of interest for committee members policy, or whether we need to have a separate policy for that. Just cleaning up the policy approach for that. I think there's still a few things we need to have questions on. The process for submitting recommendations and reports to council, the process for requesting staff support. So if a committee is looking to initiate, so do they have, some of the policies say that the committees have the ability to initiate projects. Some of the policies say they don't. They are advisory to council, they take up staff resources, they take up staff time. So is there any, what's the appetite on council around that? Do you want to only have them have matters referred to them? Do you want them to make recommendations to council on issues that they should be looking at?
Warden Weber.
Well, I mean, I think that for the most part, they're dealing with those things that we refer to them. But I do think that they have the ability to recommend to council, but they don't have the ability to tell staff to go do it.
Yeah.
Councillor Pino.
I would say that if we want a committee to provide recommendations to council outside of what we've requested of them, then we would have to specifically outline that in their terms of reference. You know, I'm not really thrilled about non-elected people just going rogue with their own ideas. You know, everybody's got good ideas, just ask them. But no, I don't think so. I think I would be more inclined, if we want specifically to have some sort of mechanism for upward feedback, then we would specifically put that in their terms of reference, so we put some boundaries around what that is.
That it has to come to council.
Oh, it can't go to staff, it has to come here.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Church.
Thank you, that's very important, because at the recent Municipal Planning Advisory Committee, which didn't come here yet because we haven't had a council meeting to bring it back, staff came up with, or not staff, some of the members came up with an idea that they wanted to bring forth to council, and I mean, the staff were very good to say, no, you know, well, I will go back to council.
Yeah.
So you're getting a little more creative on what they feel, and maybe they don't understand what the terms of reference are. The procedure. So that'd be great to clarify, because
Yeah, and I was wondering just on that, so in the terms of reference, does it actually, or did it actually ever say that these committees are not binding decisions, or something to that effect, that, you know, it rests with council? I don't know how-
Generally, they all say they're
They all say
advisory
that,
to
okay,
council, yeah.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Tara?
Aaron, did I miss anything? I know you had some notes and you were taking some notes.
I don't believe so. I think, you know, we can come back on the number of counselors per committee if we want to do one counselor per committee with an alternate. Like they're kind of ad hoc, so that can come back at
Yeah.
at a decision point.
I know one thing that we had noticed is there's some municipalities where their committee chairs are councillors. And so
Yeah.
instead of having a councillor appointed to be the person who, like, if you've got 2 councillors or 3 councillors on a committee, who reports back to council? So it's clear that it's I think it's modal may work this way, that their committee is chaired by a councillor, and that chair is responsible for bringing back the report. So the report doesn't come back as a staff report, the report comes back as an information memo to council with the recommendations. So that is an option that we could look at doing, but that would mean that one of the councillors would have to be the chair of the committee.
Councillor Bremner.
Thank you, Deputy, and that's where I was going exactly, because I knew that was something that's been popped up a couple of times. You know, how do we streamline the chair position process? And yeah, okay, thank you. You've handled that very well. I would request we take care of looking at that too. Thank you.
Councillor Connors.
Thank you. So I was drifting a little bit. So so remind me maybe what we just talked about.
Yeah.
And that is if there are potentially 2 councillors on a committee,
Yeah?
who might bring the committee report back, things like that. That's
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay, so the only experience I can speak to would be EDI. And Councillor Asif, Deputy Warden Asif, and myself, and then Councillor Vino and myself were, over my time here, the 2 councillors. So, in FAC was Deputy Warden Shadford and myself for a time. I didn't have a really problem with the fact that we were tag teaming and one person took the lead and the other person would jump in if the other person didn't quite remember or would want to add value, and I didn't have a problem with that. So I don't know if I want it that tight.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to have the
Okay,
discussion.
good,
Yeah, no, we're not
Thank you.
recommending,
Okay, no.
we wanted to have the discussion.
Like I said, I
Yeah,
was
well-
drifting a little before.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah, well, Warden Weber and Councillor Vino and myself are on REMAC.
Yeah.
So, you know, we,
Yeah.
so we usually, you know, Andre does it, but if there's something he missed or. Okay, great, thanks, Terry. You can continue.
Okay, well, no, those were the discussions we wanted to have, so just knowing if there was appetite for that, or if you want to keep the chair position open and kind of go with how we've been doing it now, and just identifying the terms of reference that one of the councillors will be responsible for bringing that report back, so. That's fine. Yeah.
The only other point of clarification that I was hoping to get today or discussion is based on if we do consolidate and create kind of an overarching committee policy, then that would naturally create these individual terms of references for the committees with specific mandates for those committees. Does council wish to have those as policies that are brought back through council through the policy process, or is that more handled on as terms of like a terms of reference and handled operationally?
Terms of reference are easier to fix
Yeah.
than policies are.
We'll just have some discussion with Sam around, is that on board? I
Yeah.
think that's probably okay, we can do that. Yep. Good. I think that kind of wraps it up for us.
Sorry, Sam.
I just had one thought. You were talking about being consistent in terms of number of councillors. If all the committees are different sizes, then it's going to be tricky to come up with a number. So it might be better to think of a percentage or a proportion, like you might say 1/4 or 1/3 will be councillors, the rest will be, you know, citizens. You know, the council size might be 7 or 8 or 10, whatever the council number, but anyway, the number, it will change a bit from committee to committee, but it'll be the same proportion. Because you don't typically want to have a majority of councillors, because you're just hearing from yourself then. But you do want to have adequate representation. Okay, that's it.
Councillor Vino.
Through the chair, I'll just ask an open question then. When we appoint more than one counselor to any committee, what is it that we're trying to achieve when we do this? I don't know the answer. I would like to know what others think we're doing.
To some degree, like say the fire advisory for Chester, well, you want a representative from each of the communities that's that's there, so that's, in that particular case.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying that it's, there's differences all the time.
Say EDI, you have two.
Yeah, well,
So why two versus one, and when we made that decision, what were we trying to achieve by bringing two versus one?
Don't know.
Yeah, it makes sense in some, it doesn't make sense in others, Andre. Yeah.
It makes sense as an alternate,
Yeah, to have somebody
to
else
have
who
an
can.
alternate.
I can see
No.
always having a backup,
Yeah.
but the expectation that two will always show up, but what are we trying to achieve? You only need one to carry the message back to council.
Yeah.
So, I just wanna know, I'm not trying to be, this time,
No,
I'm not
and I
this
don't know
time
the
trying to
answer.
be
Yeah.
a pain, I'm just asking.
The only thing I can think is that on something like especially if you're expanding a planning advisory committee, you may want to have more than one counselor voice at that table. You may want to expand the representation at the table.
And also in some terms of reference, the council is a voting member as well, and some they are non-voting. So that would be also brought up for discussion when we bring back a more consistent approach to that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an advisory and we're hoping to hear from our
Community.
residents that populating with many counselors that especially vote, it's,
We could take
I just,
a look.
I think that we need to be thoughtful about this.
Yep.
If we're gonna look at this, let's
Yep,
pull
be
it
thoughtful
apart
about it.
here.
Yeah, 'cause there's
Councillor Connors.
certainly some we don't need anymore.
Thank you. So if I'm getting it right, each of these committees, we will be looking at the percentage, possibly, but the ones that'll jump out might be not the Fire Service Committee, which you had spoken to, Warden Weber, but like Fire Advisory Committee, right? That's all 7 departments and 7 commissions, and we have 2 counselors. So that we'll be looking at 1 counselor there. EDI, and all of them as we go through the list. So it's not just simply EDI, correct? It's all of them. Yep,
It's all of them.
yep,
It's now,
fantastic.
some of them by the nature of the committee, like dangerous and unsightly, is not a citizen committee.
No, oh, no, oh, no, that would be a counselor.
That's-
yeah, and
that's
staff.
council
Counselor and staff,
only.
council and staff, yeah. Yeah.
And then audit committee, of course, and then the
Yep. Oh, yeah.
RCMP advisory, you have, I think, 3 counselors on there now.
Yep.
And 4 members of the public, so that's another one you could take a look at
We're
as
gonna
well.
have to tear apart
Yeah,
a little
you're
bit.
gonna have to look at some of those,
I
yep.
think through the chair. I think it's anything where we're in an advisory capacity. That really begs the question, why put more than 1 counselor? I would start with that.
Okay.
All right, just, I don't know how far we're along here, we're gonna plow through. Do
think-
you wanna
I
take
think-
5 minutes?
I think we're done.
Oh, we're done, okay, perfect. Okay, oh, sorry. Counselor Coolin.
Well, we're gonna wrap up for a break. So we're gonna go, my understanding is we're gonna go through every one of these committees and look at them individually.
So I
and
think what we're
Pocket ideas and go from there, and
I think what we need to do as staff is take this feedback that we've got today, because it's not, no decisions are being made today, it's just,
Absolutely.
it's just discussion and direction. Take the feedback, look at what changes would need to be made, and then if we need further direction on some of those, we'll come back and have another session like this. And if not, then likely what will happen is you'll see a recommendation, staff report come forward with, here's the discussion, here's the changes that need to be made based on the discussion we had.
so this whole list could be streamlined at some
the-
point. with
potentially the whole
recommendations come back.
yeah.
Perfect, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, I'll call
Thank
for,
I'll move we adjourn.
sorry, would everybody allow Carol to speak?
Oh, sorry.
You come right in,
was a public meeting.
Oh, it is, yeah, no.
yeah, you come right ahead, Carol.
Oh, I didn't realize you wanted.
Oh, yes, you knew that I had to be saying something. There are 3 things I think that come up with committees. Number 1 is what's happened with Planning Advisory Committee. What happens when you lose a chair? Does it automatically move to the vice chair? Do you meet again, or do you then re-elect a new chair? So, I mean, that was not clear, and I don't think anybody has solved that one yet. So that's one I think you need to look at. What happens when you lose a chair? And it's not always going to be a counselor, number one. The second thing is that I think, and I may be wrong, that your Heritage Committee needs to expand. I've said this before, and I've talked to you about it before. I think it needs to be municipal, and I think that it should be really a working committee of council, not council, a working committee, not asking you to do the work or anything. I think that the people who sit on that committee are the people who are interested in the history of their area. And I think, and I may be wrong, but I think that those are the people that should be compiling some lists, compiling some names, compiling events that need to be looked into and recorded somewhere. Whether it's just simply a list that says in Andre's area, there are these people who have a specific knowledge of, well, whatever it might be. Or they have a lot of information about that should be collected, perhaps, and added. Right now, we're adding another 10 people more to a list of interviews, so that we get a look or a picture of the older people and their lifestyle within the area. Andre's found a couple people for me from the Western Shore area. But I think that that's what we need. We have a lot of heritage. And I'm afraid that once I'm not here, that a lot of this is going to be gone. Because a lot of it, I can't do all of it. And I think if you had a working heritage committee that at least made a list of what we know or what our elders knew, then we would have a better chance of maintaining what we have.
Councilor Vino, you have the
And
floor.
I just wanted to ask, thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
But what would be the mandate of this committee? I mean, that's the thing. So think from our perspective, of course, for a moment, so I can see a role for a heritage committee as a subcommittee of our planning advisory committee, where you could have planning issues and you may want to refer them to a heritage committee because there may be some historical importance to the decision you're making. But beyond that, how do we take the information that you're seeking, these old people or whatever, these people that have this, how do we use, because we want to use it to inform policy. So what are we doing with this information?
Well, at the present time, all we're doing is interviewing and combining it for people to get online on YouTube.
Right.
And the plan, at least what the Heritage Society is working right now, is to put the interview up online and identify where these people lived, and then another section which would identify things that are of historical importance in that area. Now, that's just the Heritage Committee, but if you had a group from the municipality who were interested, then you've got a chance to say that you're involved, if you will, with the heritage, that you have a repository of some sort, whether it's online or it's in an archive or whatever, that you can refer to. Because eventually, you're going to be gone too. And
I'm going to live forever.
Take his money
too,
with
but
you.
I'm not going to. So, but I mean, I'm not sure exactly how I can give you a policy. What I'm saying is that the heritage is important. It's where we've come from.
It is, I just, from our perspective, our role as policymakers. So when our committees are there to help us, to advise us on how to make policy, but how do we get from your committee the information we need to make good policy? That's the linkage we need.
Yeah. But you're expecting me to find that linkage.
Well, you have to help us.
Well, I'm willing to try. I think
Okay.
I sent
We
you.
may need to help the Heritage Society with that component of what you're talking about
Yeah,
a little more.
but I mean, I think the thing is that if we continue to just ignore it,
No, we
and
can't.
it's left just with the Heritage Society, then that's not good either. Because you want to include everybody. I mean, people want to know about Ross Farm. They want to know about the people who came there, about the summer that didn't exist. And about the settlers that came to Sherwood and ended up in New Ross. And I mean, Chester Basin has its own history, so I mean, there's, you know, who compiles or ensures that your policy doesn't say that you want to ensure that the history of the municipality doesn't
Well, I would see a role for that
disappear?
as a subcommittee of planning committee, or as a subcommittee of our Parks and Rec or Recreation Committee, where, you know, we're planning out parks and like our history and stuff like that. You have interpretive panels and all that sort of thing. I see a Heritage Committee in that sort of role as a subcommittee that can be drawn on as a resource to help inform policy and make decisions. That's the crucial thing, but we have to identify where we want to have that information, and then it becomes easier.
And I think, you know, Carol's very passionate about this, and I think she's done a lot of work. We all want to get to the same place. Just, you know, how we get there. And so, having said that, I'll call for an adjournment.
So moved again.
Thank you.
I don't need any motion, a seconder for this, from what I understand from Sam. So you can just get up and leave. Meeting's adjourned.
We don't vote on it?